At our family reunion, my husband's cousin cornered me alone. I'm actually his first wife, she confessed. He told me he'd divorced you years ago. My husband entered, his expression horrified. Explain this, I demanded. Instead of answering, he bolted for the door. That's when I revealed the recording device in my hand. I watched my husband's face drain of color as he froze in the doorway. His eyes darted between me and the woman he'd introduced as his cousin, Rebecca, just hours earlier. Explain this, I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. Explain how your cousin is actually your first wife, a wife you never divorced. Instead of answering, James lunged for the door. That's when I revealed the recording device in my hand, the red light blinking accusingly. Running won't help, I said as family members gathered in the hallway. Everyone already knows, your sister, your parents. They're all hearing the truth right now. Rebecca stood beside me, her arms crossed. I thought she was your ex-wife, she said to James. He told me you divorced her years ago. James's mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. The perfect, charming man I'd married 4 years ago suddenly looked like a cornered animal. And in that moment, I realized our entire marriage was built on a fraud that was about to collapse. I met James at a charity fundraiser, where he was the charismatic auctioneer. He approached me afterward, complimenting the painting I'd donated. An artist with a generous heart, he'd said, his smile reaching his eyes in a way that made me believe every word. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Weekend trips to the coast, surprise picnics, handwritten notes left on my pillow. 6 months later, we were married in a small ceremony. My family is complicated, he explained when I asked why only his parents attended. Estrangements, old grudges, better to keep it simple. I believed him because he made it easy to believe. When he suggested we move to Portland for your art career, I agreed, despite leaving my gallery connections behind. When he managed our finances because he had a head for numbers, I was grateful. When he checked my phone because he was worried about scam calls, I found it endearing. The gallery I'd worked with for years tried to convince me to stay. You're just starting to make a name for yourself, my mentor warned. But James had already signed a lease on our new apartment, and his excitement about our fresh start was contagious. Within a month, I'd packed up my studio and said goodbye to 5 years of professional relationships. If you've ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they weren't who they claimed to be, subscribe to Reddit Family Sagas now. The warning signs I missed might be the ones you're overlooking today. The first real flag appeared 2 years into our marriage. I found a statement for a bank account I didn't know existed. It's for your birthday surprise, James explained, kissing my forehead. I never saw that statement again, and my birthday gift was a weekend at a spa, alone, while he handled a work emergency. When I returned from that weekend, our apartment smelled faintly of unfamiliar perfume. The sheets had been changed, and a long blonde hair, not mine, was stuck to the bathroom mirror. James claimed his mother had visited to drop off a housewarming gift, though we'd been living there for nearly a year. I found the gift, still in its bag, receipt dated that same day. Then came the phone calls he'd taken our garage, his voice dropping to a whisper when I approached. Client confidentiality, he'd say with an apologetic smile. James wasn't even a lawyer. He worked in real estate development. Last year, I found women's perfume on his collar. My assistant hugged me after I approved her raise, he explained. I chose to believe him, even as doubt crept in. That night, I called his office to surprise him with dinner plans. His assistant answered, a man named David, who'd been working there for 3 years. The most telling sign was his reaction whenever his hometown came up. Nothing there for us, he'd say, tension lining his face. For 4 years, we'd avoided family gatherings until his father's 70th birthday made refusal impossible. As we drove to the reunion, James gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Just a quick appearance, he kept saying. We'll leave right after dinner. He took 3 wrong turns on the way, despite having grown up in the area. When I pointed this out, he snapped at me for the first time in our marriage. At the party, I noticed how family members stared at me with strange expressions, curiosity, confusion, and something that looked uncomfortably like pity. Rebecca approached me immediately, her resemblance to James striking enough to make the cousin story believable. I've heard so much about you, she said, though James had never mentioned her to me. Throughout dinner, I caught them exchanging glances. James knocked over his wine when Rebecca announced she needed to show me old family photos upstairs. His mother touched my arm as I stood to follow Rebecca. "It's time," she whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. Have you ever felt that prickle on the back of your neck when something isn't right? Comment below if your intuition has ever saved you from disaster. What happens next in this story might make you trust those instincts more often. In the guest bedroom, Rebecca closed the door and turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I'm not his cousin," she said flatly. "I'm his wife, his first wife. We've been married for 8 years. My world tilted sideways. That's impossible. We've been married for 4 years. And he told me you were his ex-wife," she continued, pulling out her phone to show me photos. Their wedding, holidays together, a life parallel to mine. "He said you divorced 5 years ago but stayed friends. He even claimed you were fine with him, using your joint accounts to help me start my business." My joint accounts. The missing money. The weekend trips. Everything clicked into horrible focus. As Rebecca spoke, I quietly pulled out my phone and hit record. My hands trembled, but my mind was suddenly painfully clear. "He's been living with me in Seattle 3 days a week," she continued. "Business trips, he told you? He told me the same about you." She showed me text messages from just 2 days ago. James telling her he loved her, that he was excited to see her at the reunion, that they needed to play it cool around his parents. Messages sent while he lay next to me in bed, claiming to be answering work emails. When she finished, I sat in stunned silence before asking, "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I found another bank statement," she said, "with a woman's name I didn't recognize. I think there might be a third wife." She handed me a paper with a woman's name, Claire Donovan, and an account number I recognized from our tax documents. James had told me it was a business investment account. I stumbled from the room and nearly collided with James's sister Emma in the hallway. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "You know, don't you?" I whispered. She nodded slightly. "I suspected. Dad confirmed it yesterday. I'm so sorry." "How long have you known?" I asked, my voice breaking. "I saw him with Rebecca last Christmas when he was supposed to be with you in Portland. He claimed you were sick and couldn't travel." She squeezed my arm. "Mom and Dad only put it all together last month when they found paperwork in his old room." I texted my best friend Mia, who had questioned James's stories from the beginning. "You were right. Need lawyer recommendations. We'll call later." Then I returned downstairs with Rebecca, positioning ourselves in the living room where James couldn't avoid us. When he entered and saw us together, understanding dawned on his face immediately. "What have you been telling her?" he demanded, trying to sound authoritative. "The truth," I replied. "Something you should try sometime." "This is ridiculous," he scoffed, looking around at the family members who had fallen silent. "Rebecca is confused. She's always been unstable." "Stop," Rebecca interrupted. "Just stop lying, James." "Explain this," I demanded, holding up my phone with our marriage certificate displayed. "Explain how you married me while still married to her." That's when he bolted, and I revealed the recording device. After James fled, his father approached us, shoulders slumped. "We only confirmed our suspicions recently," he admitted. "The separate lives, the financial irregularities. When both of you RSVP'd to the party, we realized this was our chance to end it." "There's more," his mother added quietly. "A woman called here last month looking for him. Someone named Claire from San Diego." "3 wives?" Rebecca whispered. "At least," his father replied. "And we found evidence of significant financial fraud. He's been using money from all his relationships to fund a Ponzi scheme." His mother took my hand. "We've contacted authorities. They're looking for him now." If this story has shocked you, hit like and share your thoughts below. Have you ever discovered someone close to you was living a double life? The next part of this story shows how quickly you can reclaim your power after betrayal. That night, from a hotel room, I called a lawyer who specialized in fraud cases. I froze our joint accounts, contacted credit bureaus, and filed a police report. Rebecca did the same from her room down the hall. The next morning, we met for coffee. 2 strangers connected by the same betrayal. "I keep asking myself how I missed the signs," she said, stirring her untouched latte. Because he designed it that way, I replied. We saw what he wanted us to see. Rebecca reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. I found these in our Seattle house last night. Thought you should see them. Inside were documents showing James had taken out a $50,000 loan in my name 3 months ago. My signature, perfectly forged. Another paper showed he'd listed my art collection as collateral for a business venture, pieces I'd spent years creating, now legally at risk. Over the following weeks, more revelations emerged. James had indeed married a woman in San Diego 18 months ago. He had credit cards in 5 different names. He'd stolen nearly $200,000 from my inheritance by forging documents. The police found him trying to cross the Canadian border with fake identification and $50,000 in cash. The detective who called me sounded almost impressed. He had a whole new identity ready to go. Passport, credit cards, even a job lined up in Vancouver. 8 months later, I sat across from my lawyer as she delivered the news. The divorce is final, she said, sliding the papers toward me. And with his conviction for fraud, the judge awarded you full restitution. What about the house? I asked. Sold. Your portion of the proceeds has been deposited in your new account. She handed me a check for $178,000, money I never thought I'd see again. The DA wants to know if you'll testify at his sentencing next month. I'll be there, I said, surprised by my own steadiness. That evening, I met Rebecca for our now regular dinner. Our unlikely friendship had become one of the few positive outcomes of this ordeal. Claire joined us, the third wife, a pediatric surgeon who'd lost her life savings to James. I signed a lease on that studio space, I told them, feeling a spark of excitement for the first time in months. The one downtown? That's perfect for your new collection. Rebecca raised her glass. To new beginnings. And to trusting ourselves again, I added. Claire smiled. To the sisterhood of the traveling con man. We laughed, a real laugh that felt like healing. Later that night, I stood in my new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. James. I can explain everything. Please call. I never stopped loving you. I blocked the number without replying and hung the first painting of my new collection, a phoenix rising from ashes, wings spread wide against a dawn sky. Beneath it sat the recording device that had captured his final betrayal, now transformed into a sculpture base, a reminder that sometimes our worst moments become the foundation for our greatest strength. Some betrayals can't be explained away. Some truths once revealed can only propel you forward. The woman who had once believed every word James said no longer existed. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and finally, genuinely free. If this story of uncovering deception and reclaiming your life resonated with you, please subscribe to Reddit Family Sagas for more journeys through life's most challenging moments. Share in the comments. What helped you rebuild after betrayal? Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.